Welcome to the first episode of the Forging Alpha podcast. I'm Ricky Hughes and
Caleb Worsland.
Right on, man. So we really don't have like a full scope of what we're going to talk about yet, but we have some general ideas. Do you kind of want to run through the genres of things we're going to talk about on here?
I think everything that we kind of encompass in our own lives, business, fitness, mindset, nutrition, life in general.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun time. I'm excited for it. We're not really sure where the road's going to take us, but it's going to be a fun ride while we're going down that road.
We'll have fun at least.
I mean, it'll at least give us something to post.
We're just here for the content.
Yeah, we're just here for the content, to be honest.
I'm excited to do it, man.
I am too.
We've been talking about doing something like this for a bit.
We have. We've tried a few different routes, coaching group routes, but just not quite enough people in there yet to make it self-sustaining. You got to have a really strong group of people in there to make that work. I think we need to give the people kind of a background on who you are, who I am, and then go from there.
Agreed. Who's Ricky Hughes?
I grew up in Morganville, Kansas, went to Clay Center. So out in central Kansas, it's like 4,500 people. Started lifting weights in sixth or seventh grade. I had some pretty bad body image issues that started that. I was kind of chunky, didn't like taking my shirt off at the lake, that type of thing. And that's kind of what sparked that interest in sports, interest in lifting weights and that type of thing. And then the lifting weights kind of led into personal development as a whole, which is how I feel like a lot of people end up in that realm. But graduated high school in 2015, went to Fort Hays, where I was planning on going into physical therapy. That quickly changed to computer science, which then changed to business. And then after 2 years, dropped out to sell cars. Personal trained for a while after that, sold some insurance, ran some gyms in Kansas City, helped open those. And that's where our paths crossed. And now 2.5 years ago, left the gym space to join a marketing company, which is powering this podcast, Moss Marketing Group. And here we are. That was the quick boom, 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 up to speed.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going into physical therapy.
I mean, going into physical, I was gen eds, physical therapy.
Yeah, because I at one point was going to go into physical therapy. I had the prerequisite, I guess, as exercise physiology, stepping stone into that, but decided that wasn't the route I wanted to go.
What changed your mind?
Spending another 3 years of my life doing that. And my thing has always been freedom, which is now why I run my own business and do my own thing, because I've had some great bosses, but at the end of the day, I don't really want to work for anybody else at this point. So I think that, and my brother now going into chiropractic talks about how physical therapist essentially is a middleman that has not a ton of pull. You're kind of in between what the doctor says you should be doing and the insurance companies, and you're somewhat left out to just be the correspondent with those things and do what they want to do. And so
it's a tough industry.
It is a tough industry.
But before we get into that, though, let's give the quick rundown on Caleb's history.
The quick rundown on Caleb's history. So I'm from small town in central Washington State, Cle Elum, Washington. I am the oldest of 8 kids. I come from big baseball and outdoor background. I was a college baseball player. My dad is a fly fishing guide professionally and spent probably 100 days out of the year hunting and fishing, hiking, camping. Came out to Kansas, pursuing baseball, going to school, little college down in central Kansas. And after graduating, I had family in Kansas City and ended up coming up here to pursue an MLM. I had a guy convince me that Herbalife was going to be the be-all, end-all of my life going forward. So came up here of grand hopes of that, and that's honestly, I had somebody tell me the other day, I was like, oh, so you've always been an entrepreneur? I'm like, kind of, I wouldn't do that. I was like, no, you've always been an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like, you moved across the state for something and then decided to stay there in an unknown city pursuing something. So that was kind of my scapegoat into that when I realized that was a cult and not something I really wanted to do. Switch gears and try to bunch of shit out. Are we allowed to cuss on this bitch?
I think so.
All right.
I think it'd be weird if we didn't.
I think it would be too. Tried a bunch of stuff out for the next few years. I was signed to a modeling agency. I applied to be
You what?
I was signed to
I thought you said signed
agency.
to a modeling agency.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah. I ended up having like one photo shoot and that was it.
Yeah.
I applied for everything. I applied to be a professional dog walker.
Really?
I applied to
This
be
is when you were leaving.
This was, yeah, so I was still here. I was with my family in Kansas City trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So at that point, I'm like, I'm just going to do it all, try to do it all,
Yeah.
get as much experience, get as much exposure to things to figure out what the next step was going to be for me. So I was a baseball coach. I was doing lessons on the side. Pretty much from the get-go, I was doing nutrition. Like the week after I graduated, I had former teammates paying me to write them meal plans and exercise programs.
Really?
Yeah. So going forward, I ended up for the next few years working at a boot camp as a trainer, and then I worked at a country club doing group fitness and also working in the kitchen department, making smoothies, being a server, working in the kitchen industry, alternating days between those couple of jobs. And in the last few years, I've done a ton of different things. Trainer at different places. The nutrition was always kind of playing third fiddle because I always felt like I needed a secondary job. And so fast forward a few years, obviously meeting you at the gym, working at the gym as a trainer, manager, and then decided, what the heck am I doing? I need to give this a shot with the nutrition thing. It's something I'd been doing for the previous 4 years, but always felt like I needed a real job while doing that. And had built up a clientele, worked with MLB, NBA clients the entire duration of that as a side hustle. And so in 2022, decided to give it a go and been rolling strong ever since that.
Decided to make the jump.
Make the jump, man. Back myself into a corner and see what I was made of.
And you made the jump into doing what?
I made the jump into being a full-time nutrition coach and CEO, entrepreneur. So I own Game Time Nutrition, which is a Trojan horse for nutrition coaching, but we also do hormone evaluations. We're partnered up with a hormone therapy clinic where we do hormone evaluations, blood work. We do supplement coaching. We do a little bit on the fitness side still, but it's mostly geared towards the nutrition, the lifestyle, the supplement coaching to have better impact. And we work primarily with athletes and then busy executives and entrepreneurs.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
I
So
love it.
long story short story long.
Short story long.
Yeah, on the background of that. So headwaying off into that, where do you want to take this? You want to go, let's go down the rabbit hole of what has led you being to where you're at, making the jumps. Is it becoming a better version of yourself overall? Like what has led you from going from school to the car industry to the gyms to here? Like what's not kept you in one specific spot?
I think one of the biggest things is, for whatever reason, even from when I was young, I just really don't care what the status quo per se is, or like what other people are doing or what my peers are doing. Like I'm going to do what I think is the right move. And it doesn't really matter what else is going on. Like leaving school to go sell cars. Not that I made a killing selling cars by any means, but it was that step that led to the next thing. And if you never take that first step, if you don't have the courage to either change what you're doing to something that's uncomfortable or different, and most everything is going to be uncomfortable when it's different because it's just not what you're used to. I mean, we're habitual creatures, so anytime you're doing something new, it's going to be challenging. But if you don't stay comfortable, if you're willing to step out of that, that's kind of how things snowball.
Yeah, like that.
I feel like that's what's allowed me to kind of make some more abrupt moves like that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think stagnation is one of my biggest fears in life.
It's terrifying.
Which is probably a blessing and a curse, because I think it always is in the background of your mind about what's the next thing, or comparing yourself to somebody that's either further ahead of you career-wise or even in age. You know, I look at people that are in their 40s or even 30s, and, you know, you make those comparisons about, gosh dang, man, why am I not a little bit further ahead than where I am? But at the end of the day, I think it's your biggest strength is probably also your biggest weakness to some extent.
That the aggressive hunger for more, that ambition it's what fuels you, but then it also makes it hard to relax and enjoy where you're at.
100%.
Or at least that's the experience that I've had.
I would agree.
You've got to be really intentional with the rest and enjoyment or appreciation and gratitude of where you're at, and not just totally focus on where you're trying to go. I mean, you still got to focus on that, but that goalpost is always moving. Like there's always levels to everything. And I think that progression through the levels is a lot of what makes people happy and gives them the drive to keep going. But if you're always looking way out into the future, I mean, there's always going to be somebody that's doing better than you are. So you gotta, I was reading the name escapes me now, but hopefully it comes back to me, but it's about the gap versus the gain or something along those sorts.
Yeah.
And it was essentially talking about the same guy that wrote the 10X is easier than 2X. He was talking about it can be dangerous to judge your progress or distance from a goal compared to where you're at now. It's a lot healthier and more motivating to look back at the distance that you've covered already. Because it might feel like you're really far away from the Lamborghini and the giant house and all the fun stuff that you might want, or just the freedom and financial security. But if you look back at where you were 2-3 years ago or 5 years ago, that can be a lot more motivating.
100%. 100%. One thing I do too now, as I'm stepping into these new phases of coaching and business, is kind of like roadmap coaching. So I've got specifically more so with athletes where we're sitting down and looking at exactly where they want to go, and then that gap of the things that we're doing in order to be there. And a lot of high level athletes struggle with those same things. And it's interesting looking from a bird's eye perspective of how good I am with that for other people, of like, what's the target long term? Let's stay focused on that. And here's the things we need to do, because we all have a tendency to start jumping ship when distractions come in, and you know, really staying focused on that long-term goal, the long-term boring, simple things that we need to go to get there. But then personally, we get wrapped up in some of those same issues. Like I look at myself and I'm like, gosh, like, and that's why I think that having outside sources and mentors and even different people that you're talking with that are helping you with that and then reeling you back in about, look, dude, like this is how far you've come. Have gratitude with that. And also listening to those people that are way ahead of you talk about how you have this assumption you're going to reach some pinnacle. Yeah. You're going to reach some peak point. And honestly, you're going to look back in 20, 30 years, and this is going to be what you wish you were in still. You wish you were going to be in the process of doing that, because most people would trade everything that they had, accolades, careers, money, whatever it is, to be young again, to be in the hustle and be in that season of growth, not knowing exactly where you're going to be at or where you want to go, and trying to stay focused on that. I think the gratitude portion of things, but then also that this is in some ways the pinnacle is that, I mean, this season of struggle or whatever you want to call it.
Alex Hormozi talks about the good old days and how the tough times that you're going through, like you were just saying, these are the good old days of tomorrow. Like you're going to look back at the days when you had just started online coaching and you're getting that all figured out, and you're making all the processes and you're creating the systems to scale up and everything. And those are the good old days. Just like back in the day when you were playing sports and you were going through everything, you were like, this is tough. This is whatever. You're still hopefully having fun. But then when you look back at it, you can never go back in time to appreciate a moment. So the only thing that you can use with that is use that as a reference for today and make sure that you appreciate today. Because at the end of the day, like, no matter how successful you get, you still just need to enjoy the process on your way to get there. Otherwise, you're going to get there and then.
100%, man. I mean, even looking back, like you can probably look back 5 years ago. And I mean, you probably somewhat have that feeling. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah. I mean, thinking back to like I was making smoothies for people 5 years ago, you know, and now I'm running a multi-6-figure business, and just the process of doing that and looking back, like I had a lot of fun along the way, and appreciating that and the gratitude that comes with that, and not getting so wrapped up in the next thing. It's tough to do. Easier said than done.
It's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think having a roadmap as to where you're going, though, like you were talking about, you do with the athletes, that makes a huge difference. Because if you don't ever take the time, which it sounds really simple, but I think a lot of people are missing out on it. If you don't take the time to create a roadmap for where you're trying to go, whether that could be in the macro scheme of things, like just what do you want your life to look like and lifestyle design, that type of thing, but also on the fitness aspect, like what kind of shape do you want to be in? What kind of strength do you want to have? When do you want to get there?
Yeah.
Those are all really important things so that you can actually have a game plan as to what to do.
100%. The main conversation we have with that when we start that process, when I'm working with somebody, is you wouldn't start driving to Alaska or Florida without a roadmap for where you are right now. You wouldn't just take off in your car and go there. And you might end up in Georgia, you might end up in Arizona, like if you're just going without a roadmap. That seems really stupid when you compare it to that, but 90% of people are going through their life like that, like hoping they get to some kind of destination with no clear set roadmap of getting there. Yeah. So whether that's careers, whether that's life, and I think some people want to just leave things up to chance and leave it up to, all right, I'll know when I feel called to be going a different direction and stuff. And I'm a religious person, and I think that some people are under the impression they just leave it up to God in every aspect and doing that. But if you have no course and no direction, you're probably not going to get there. It's like you have to start towards a destination, and if you need to take a detour, you need to switch lanes. You need to do that. But I think having some type of destination and pivoting, moving along the way with whatever that is in life, whether it's your fitness, whether that's career goals, whether that's your relationships. Like if there's nothing and it's all random and you're just kind of floating through it, I think that those are probably the most unhappy people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that. When we left the gym, would that have been 2022?
Yes.
It would have been February 2022, I believe, or into January. So I kind of ran into a whole string of things right then. We weren't going to work out at the gym that we were leaving. So I didn't have any other gym that I liked to work out at. Mm-hmm. So it was close to our house. So I kind of used that as an excuse, or that made it easier to kind of lose the habit of going to the gym. So that would have been, like I said, February 2022. It was like the first time that I had not worked out consistently, and that lasted pretty much the whole year of 2022.
Yeah.
But what's dangerous about that is when you stop working out, it's not like the next day you lose all your muscle, gain a bunch of fat.
Yeah. It's
such a gradual decay that you can lose that habit and you don't even notice for 2-3 months down the road. You start to feel a little bit softer, your energy's a little bit lower. And then I was also moving to a desk job at the same time. So I was walking less, I wasn't working out, my nutrition kind of sucked. And that kind of just like slowly kept building on itself until you look back after you haven't been going to the gym really more than 10% of the days for a year. Then you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I kind of fell off the wagon.
Yeah, man.
But it's such a gradual decay that it's easy to slip into that. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, I slid down the hill pretty far. I got ways to make up.
What was the thing that got you back on track? Because I feel like most people don't stop that downward slide.
Yeah. A lot of people, it just falls apart. It was a combination of a couple of things. We had some vacations planned that were going to be on a beach. So I knew I wanted to be in better shape. So it was kind of a combination of having an event on the calendar. And then I did also get my hormones and vitamins in check at kind of a similar time. So I feel like it's just been kind of a melody of all of that stuff has definitely gotten me back onto the wagon.
I noticed that trend a lot with athletes post, and more on a macro scale, post athletic life. Something that I struggled with, and I think that one thing that was my saving grace was that I always enjoyed the fitness aspect of things. A little bit of background about me. Coming in, I was always a skinny kid growing up. Coming into my freshman year of college, I was about 168 pounds. Same thing. Body dysmorphia, but for me, it was always being super skinny.
You don't want to be People don't want to be the fat guy. A lot of people also don't want to be the skinny guy.
And I don't think people realize that somewhat similar in aspects of self-consciousness and things. Anyway, fast forward, my freshman year of college, I really found a love for fitness. Me and my buddy AJ, who's now a colleague of mine, we went down to Arizona, spent an entire summer in like a pro-style off-season, living in a one-bedroom apartment, not spending any money. All we did was train for 6 days a week, eat and sleep. Within the course of that year, I went from 168 pounds to 220 pounds. And just got hooked on the fitness bug. So coming out of that, and
you say that was a year? From
that was
168
1
to 220?
Yeah.
That's
calendar
impressive.
year. Yeah.
I think my freshman year of college, I think I put on 20 to 30 pounds, and I thought that was a lot. 168 to 220, you were feeling totally different.
Yeah, I
That's
kind
like
of
two
become obsessed
shirt
with
sizes.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I got to the point where I was so obsessed with the bulking, and then I ended up going over the fact and getting up to 240 in a 37-inch jean, which was not good either. But I was at the point where like eating became such a priority that I would be taking meals everywhere with me. I'd be eating in the car to the point, and I would eat so much that I would make myself sick. There's multiple times I can vividly remember like puking,
Oh my goodness.
puking out the side of my car.
Do you know what kind of calorie intake you had?
5,000 plus.
That's awesome.
This was a peanut butter and ice cream with a mass gainer protein shake type of a diet. I mean, 7 strict meals a day. Not necessarily strict, but I was eating in 7 meals. Yeah.
You got to have at least 7, otherwise you're not getting
100%. You know, it started off decently good stuff with like steak, veggies, carbs every single meal, and that led into then, you know, cosmic brownies with every single meal. It's just the way to get the calories in. Going to McDonald's and getting 3 Big Macs and every way to get it in. But anyway, different story. Getting out on a tangent there. But that gave me the bug for the fitness. So post athletic career, I had that to some extent. It's ebbed and flowed based on priority levels. Again, when you're not working towards something, it's hard to find a reason sometimes. Like when you don't have that in the back of your mind that you're going to be, you know, you're getting ready for an athletic season. It's hard sometimes finding a reason to train as intensely you're going to the gym. But I think one thing that was a saving grace was I had that. Majority of the guys that I know fall off the wagon pretty hard after that because they were training solely for getting ready for professionals or for a athletic season. And without that, there's no reason for doing that. And a lot of guys end up feeling lost after that. And so, you know, whether it's working towards something, whatever the reason is being, but that it tends to be a lost period, especially when it comes to like health and fitness specifically. Like I see a lot of guys, a lot of former teammates that just fall off the track. They start losing their health. You know, they put on 30, 40, 50 pounds and then it's an uphill battle getting that back. But it's interesting the psychology about what stops somebody from getting that far off the rails and like recentering, because it's never easy recentering and bringing it back in. But what would you say the reason for that is? You think it's a why? Like, do people just have a big enough why? Like for you, did it come down to a why that brought you back on track and that keeps you coming back on track when you get off?
I feel like you just have to have some type of reason to create urgency behind the training. Is that for like the last 3 or 4 months before I actually started getting back into training, I knew that I needed to train more or more frequently, consistently. I knew that I wanted to, or more so that I wanted to want to, if that makes sense. Like I didn't want to, but I craved the mindset that I used to have of enjoying the gym. Like I couldn't even imagine being as into the gym as I am now. Like I used to be. It used to be my entire being. But it probably took up too much of my attention. Yeah. Going through college and stuff like that, even in high school. But I got to the point where I couldn't even imagine like being that excited to go to the gym again. And now I'm back to that point. But you just have to have like, I think you need to have the urgency with the date on the calendar. You have to have a reason to be in better shape, or whether it's performance related or aesthetically or whatever it is, just having a reason to be at peak performance or aesthetics, a date on the calendar, and then some type of system to keep you accountable to establish the habit again. Because once you get back in the zone like then you just want to go to the gym because you want to go to the gym.
Yeah.
It gets easier. I think you still need to have something you're training towards as that kind of guiding North Star, but then the habit's a little bit self-sustaining.
How have you had to pivot from spending all your time and focus in college on the gym to now? How have you wrapped that into your lifestyle with being a busy professional?
So really having a plan on the training side. So I was one of the guys that I think we're all probably guilty of this. The 2 or 3 hour gym sessions where you think you're crushing it and you end up doing a bunch of junk volume, or you're talking to 15 different people while you're in there.
Yeah.
And I feel like my training now, because it's more guided and more intentional, I think I'm getting more out of the training that I'm doing now, even though I'm in the gym for 45 minutes or at the most like an hour 20 towards the end of a training block, whereas it used to be 2 or 3 hours.
What gets you excited about the gym now? Because you said you lost that for a while.
So far, it's been the progress, which I feel like I probably can't rely on that entirely. Right now, we're kind of making up ground to where I used to be. And when you're regaining muscle, I don't know if you've had the same experience, but I feel like it's a lot easier to regain muscle than it is to put on the muscle in the first place. So I've had some pretty quick progress over the last 6 to 9 months. So that's kind of been encouraging in its own way.
Yeah.
Like seeing the progress and the change from month to month is like, oh yeah, that's why I like doing this. That's the kind of, I think that's the aspect of the gym that I got addicted to.
And Ricky didn't mention this, but he was also a competitive powerlifter and bodybuilder.
I did skip over some things. I guess one of the other parts that kind of led into that spiral of inactivity was so lower back issues. So I don't know what exactly, I haven't gone to the doctor for it, but I've had some type of lower spinal issue a few times where it'll like pop out of place and stuff when I'm squatting or deadlifting. And it was pretty debilitating. And this last time it caused some type of sciatic nerve issues. So it was like really uncomfortable to walk around and stuff. My mobility was brought down. And then I feel like that kind of negatively snowballed because of the inactivity. So then it led to muscle atrophy. I wasn't using my glutes at all, which just made the lower back worse. And I think that kind of all compiled onto itself. Now I'm back to squatting. I feel good. We went for a run on Wednesday. That was the first time I had just gone on a run, and I guess since the foam run last year. Yeah. And then that was the first time for probably since the Murph in like 2021 or something like that. So I don't run very often, but I felt great. Like the glutes came back. I had a pretty flat ass there for a second. So I feel like
I love that.
I know the inactivity though, because like so many people sit at a desk job.
Yeah.
So getting back to squats and doing some of those movements has helped a ton. I feel like having the glute strength back has helped my lower back and just everything.
So do you think you're ever going to get back into the competitive side of things?
It's kind of, I'm a little scared of it still. Okay. I'm a little scared of it. I'm trying to picture myself squatting heavy. Yeah. And right now I feel like it wouldn't make sense. I do enjoy it though. Yeah. And what I appreciate about powerlifting is that the numbers are objective rather than subjective. So bodybuilding, it's who the judges think look better, and hopefully they have a pretty strong criteria on what they're judging. But powerlifting, it's who lifted more weight. Yeah. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. You know, one thing I forgot to mention, which I kind of feel shitty about now.
What's that?
We're both married. I've got a new baby. Like, that's just totally skipped over that part of my life. So
I haven't given my personal history really ever, I think. So
I know. Usually when I'm on these podcasts, it's just professional stuff.
Yeah.
Or people are like introducing me and then they're like married, father, etc. But
they kind of do the intro for you.
Yes, 100%. So I love you, baby. I wasn't leaving you out. And that popped into my mind because for me, a new reason for fitness, staying focused on my nutrition, lifestyle, just in general, my health, is being a dad, man. Like after getting into this process and being 5 months into it, I just don't see how you could be the best father you could be, best husband you could be, without having any focus on that. I just feel from an energy perspective, being able to play with your kids, being able to like bend down and pick up your kid, being able to like walk around with your kid. It's just kind of mind-boggling to me that we were on a downhill slide where so many men are out of shape. They have no focus on that. And for me, it became more of a motivating factor of like, I'm going to be there for the next 50 years and be physically able to play with my daughter, play with, you know, the future kids that I'll have, and not be somebody that has to take a break because I'm out of shape, or not be able to get done with a day of work and have the energy levels to be present and be focused on that. And so it's interesting how like different phases of life, you have to focus somewhat on that. Like you've got to put a powerlifting meet on the calendar. You got to put a bodybuilding show or a run. Maybe you'll never run a marathon.
I don't foresee that happening, but I mean, it's not totally out of the cards.
Yeah.
Not totally opposed. I do like to challenge myself.
Yeah.
I do not have any kids yet. I am married to my high school sweetheart, Lauren, though. We've worked together for the last almost 5 years now, which is fantastic. So she ran the gyms with us and then works at Moss Marketing Group with us as well. She's a badass.
Yeah.
But no kids yet. In the near future is the plan, though. So that's huge, because there for a little bit when I was really dealing with some lower back stuff, I was like, man, it's like kind of difficult to just walk around. Like I can't even imagine crawling around on the floor or running around, throwing a ball, whatever. And that's scary.
Yeah.
Like once you lose your mobility, that's bad news.
It is. And injuries are a way of kind of amplifying that. I think magnifying that for sure. Yeah. Last year, beginning of last year and the 6 months previous, I tore my hip flexor after getting married. I was on our bachelor trip. I'm pretty sure that's
it the paintball?
I think so. Yep. I ate shit and slid down 6 feet of turf, and I'm pretty sure I tore my hip labrum during that. And for about the next 5-6 months, on and off, I could barely walk. Like I probably could have been using crutches for a couple months at a time. Yeah. There was no running. There was no squatting. I didn't train legs.
Did you even imagine squatting at the time?
I couldn't do a bodyweight squat. There was times I couldn't get out of bed without help.
Yeah.
Like I would wake up with just shooting pain that was unheard of. I would have to go. There would be times I'd be waking up at 2 a.m. to go take an Epsom salt bath just because like the pain in my nervous system was just radiating pain that I couldn't even sleep.
Yeah.
So that was I don't know about a wake up call, but when you're injured like that, it's kind of like a foresight of like, you know, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's kind of a forecasting of what it might look like when you're 50, 60, 70 years old. And
I mean, if you feel like that, if you feel like that when you're 26 at the time,
yeah.
Could you imagine when you're double that?
No.
That'd be bad news, man.
No.
You don't recover nearly as fast when you're in your 50s as you do when you're in your 20s.
No. How has your training changed with the injuries, or even just your consciousness about warming up and mobility?
So unfortunately, the warm up has not changed a ton. I stretch my lower back and glutes out a little bit. Like I'll do hip abduction before I squat and things like that. And I feel like that's helped me activate my glutes while I'm doing the movements, which I think has been huge. But the biggest thing has just been the intentionality behind the individual reps. So instead of focusing on just the weight or the reps, it's making sure each one counts, focusing on the eccentric, slowing down. That's been huge. And just focusing on the control of the weight ends up being quite a bit safer.
Yeah.
A little bit higher reps, up to even like 25 reps for a set, just going until I get to a point where it's close to failure. For a long time, I would just like stop at 10 reps or just try to push as much weight as I can, which I feel like there's still a place even in bodybuilding for some lower rep sets. Because if you can build that strength, you're just going to be able to handle more weight on everything else. So I think that's important, but that's been the biggest change, not not trying to max out all the time.
Yeah. I think we're going forward, we'll have a little more focus with these podcasts, and maybe we'll dedicate one of the next ones just entirely to training and maybe how that's changed for each of us and how we approach things. But yeah, and I feel like it's still like I still push the limits somewhat. I like the warm-up stuff, probably push a little bit harder than maybe I should from a joint integrity perspective. Like I'm probably going to have some issues with my hips by the time I'm there. I mean, my freshman year of college, I tore a portion of my quad that's not attached where it should be. And that's always been, I think it's probably led to some issues, overcompensation on one side, using, too much of another joint or muscle group. And so, I mean, you pay the piper to some extent with whatever you've done, whether it's, powerlifting, bodybuilding, like you're going to have some aspects that you're going to pay for, but that's just the nature of doing something high level, right? Athlete, powerlifting, like you could sit around and never do anything in life and probably never have any injuries, but is that really living?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So to some extent, I think you got to be conscious about certain things, and some of the stuff is going to come up to bite us in the ass or catch up at some point. But I think you just try to keep your head above water as much as you can with those things. It's an interesting conversation too when you're talking about what I break it down into. It's kind of called the triangle of awareness is what I break it down with clients. But we're kind of getting off into the weeds of training and performance. But I mean, that's what this podcast is about, just getting a general sense of where we want to go with it. But with that triangle of awareness, and it could be training and nutrition focus, but performance, body composition or aesthetics, and health. And on the extreme ends of the spectrum, each of those is going to suffer. The other two will suffer on the extreme ends when you're focusing on one. Yeah. It's just, the nature of the beast. If you want to live to be 109 years old and have all your joints intact and never have any injuries and stuff, and, you're living on an island somewhere, you're probably not going to be a high-level CrossFit competitor, which would be like the performance side of things. And you're probably not going to be a bodybuilder and look that great. And so
you're not being 220 or above, less than 10% body fat without a little bit of some health disadvantages for sure.
Yeah.
Or at least if you hang on to that for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, the conversation about what's the most important to you right now, and that could change, but one in life, and then one when I'm, you're working towards a goal or I'm working with a client, like that's a conversation to have of like going back to that road mapping portion. Everybody usually that comes to me is like, I want to, be the healthiest I can, and I want to gain muscle and I want to lose fat. And I'm like, riding 7 horses with one ass, you're not going to get anywhere very quickly. And then, he who chases 7 rabbits catches none. And, when usually you have a conversation with people, usually you get to the bottom of what that is. And usually what somebody may have thought that they wanted isn't what they want to, because like, all right, performance, do you want to potentially have a knee replacement when you're 50 because you were a high level CrossFit competitor? And if that's worth it to you, or, if you talk to like an Olympic athlete, 99% of them, if it was the difference between winning a gold medal and then, they died 3 years later, majority of them are saying winning the gold medal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
so what their whole life to this point has been focused on.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting segue into like, what's the primary goal? And there's always some sacrifice for one thing or the other. And you look at somebody that might be a bodybuilder or a CrossFitter, and what's the representation on the outside doesn't necessarily mean too much what's going on the inside or long-term health outcomes, Yeah. What would you say that is for you right now?
Main focus, mainly aesthetics. I'm not super worried about performance right now. We have been talking about doing the MMG Olympics, in which case I do need to start getting into some performance shape. We haven't decided on the events, but that is something in the background.
And just to clarify, this isn't the drinking Olympics.
I would prefer it to be a regular Olympics. We'll see if it ends up being a regular Olympics or beer Olympics. I don't drink myself, so if it is the beer Olympics, I'm feeling pretty good about my odds.
You might be taking care of 80% of the health outcomes by just not doing that. And you might be
That's true.
better set up. So, yeah.
Might be totally all right.
Might not help your back, but
Probably not.
you might live a little bit longer with some back issues.
You think so?
I don't know. We'll see. You can start doing yoga.
I do think I should start doing yoga for really two reasons. One, the mobility aspect, and then two, the just meditation aspect of it. It's
Yeah.
calming. I like it. We have as do you. I have a pretty busy schedule. So anytime you can take time to just chill your mind, I think that's generally a good thing.
I'd agree.
There's a lot of stimulus in today's world that our primitive brains are really not set up to handle.
No. Going back also to that conversation about, what's the biggest priority. That's an interesting one when we start talking about health, because I'm like, all right, let's say that is your number one focus. You want to live to be 120 years old. You might be having to live in Costa Rica on an island, no technology, not accomplishing much in your career and stuff because that's a whole other ballgame. And I don't know, we might all have brain cancer in 20 years.
Who knows what we're putting in our bodies right now?
I mean, who knows, man? Having cell phones by our heads and stuff all day, like we can have all these conversations about health and fitness and things, and we might just be doing the damage on the day-to-day stuff in general.
My hope is that the science and technology in medicine progresses faster than the rate of all the random shit that we're throwing at our bodies. And hopefully, in 20, 30 years, there's some great new advancements in medicine that kind of just take care of some of that stuff, because we've got to be doing some ancillary damage with all the technology we have around us.
Yeah.
All the food. Our food's not very high quality anymore.
I hear people say that all the time about like, oh, it's so hard to eat, Midwest especially, which I would say Midwest is pretty far behind in terms of health focus in general.
Midwest is behind on everything, but
yes.
the health aspect is definitely one of those things.
Great place to live.
It is.
I love living out here.
Nothing wrong with being behind. It's kind of nice because you can see what's going on in the coasts and then plan ahead out here.
Yeah.
There's not as many. There's starting to be more like kind of the trendy food options that are healthier. That's starting to catch on, but yeah, definitely not as much as the coast.
Yeah. But I mean, if you live in proximity to a big city, I mean, man, there's no excuse. And I'll get a little, strict with my clients and be like, listen, motherfucker, you live in proximity to 100 grocery stores here. Yeah. You might have to pay a little more for it. You might not want to do that, but if it's really a goal, you can make it happen. You can make it happen. How's that showing up in your life with things not necessarily being convenient? Let's say the fitness or fitting that in, but like, what are some things for you that have become non-negotiables or that are personal non-negotiables for you?
Yeah. The gym is definitely one of those. For a while, when I was just getting back in, I was training 3 to 4 times a week. 3 to 4 sessions a week. And I think that's plenty to make progress, but I moved to a 6-day split simply for the habit of it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to have a rest day where I have a different morning routine and everything like that. I think building that routine is what keeps a lot of the staples in. So training before I get to work, it one accomplishes the training aspect that's important to me to reach my aesthetic goals, but also two, it just sets up my mindset so much better for the day.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the dopamine release or just being in a higher energy state. I don't know the science behind that, but I just have a way better day if I train in the mornings. So training's the biggest one now. I did fall off the wagon of our weekly date nights. Got that idea from you? Or are you still successfully consistent?
We have remained consistent. Yeah, every Wednesday for about 1.5 years now.
That's incredible.
I'm not going to say that it's a grand and spectacular date night every single Wednesday. And sometimes it shifts. Sometimes it goes from a Wednesday to a Saturday. For example, this Wednesday, our date night was going to the airport to pick up our in-laws' cars.
Hey.
And we are house hunting right now, swinging by a house to look and see if we even want to look at it, which which we ended up not wanting to do. Glad we went.
Yeah.
A little ghetto.
Do the drive-by first before you decide you want to go.
Yeah.
Schedule.
And coming home and making dinner and watching a movie for 15 minutes before the baby was awake again. So, I mean, that was our date night, but we're going to an event Saturday. So it's kind of like, yeah, that was kind of a date night, but we're going out on our own. We got a babysitter Saturday night. We're just going out to an event and getting out. So we make it happen to some extent every week. But some days we go out to eat at a restaurant or we get away. A lot of times we have the baby and it's been a long week and we just have intentional time where we make some dinner and we sit down on the couch and we're not on our phones or working as much.
Even something as simple as that makes such a huge difference, though. Like, you don't have to go to some extravagant, nice restaurant or go out to a movie or whatever it is. You don't need to spend a lot of money to have a good date night. You just need to intentionally spend time with the person that you're with. And that intentionality is that goes a long ways.
Do you feel like you're somebody that struggles with the all or nothing approach?
Absolutely.
I think we all do.
I think I have a pretty obsessive personality, so
yeah.
I'm kind of all in or all out type guy.
Agreed. I think most people do it, even if they're not high achievers or highly driven. I think that people are like, fitness is a great example. If I'm not just balls to the walls the January 1st and I'm going to the gym 7 days a week, it's not going to be anything for the next 11 months type of a deal. So, yeah. I think that for me, in this phase of life, in terms of discipline, as things get busier and life changes and I've got family, and it's the discipline of getting something done, even if it's not the most ideal. Doing a date night and making some time, even if it's a 20-minute something versus, a whole planned out extravagant night, going to the gym and getting a 20, 30-minute workout in. And that's something I work with when we're doing the road mapping things with a lot of high achieving athletes and entrepreneurs of like, discipline for you might mean less. It might mean getting something in when you can't, even if you can't do what was planned, or, spending 3 hours on something, and just being more intentional versus having the quantity aspect of it. I think that's a big deal.
Especially if it's somebody that was a former athlete that is familiar with what that grind can look like, and they're used to training. When they were training, it was 6 times a week or maybe even 2-a-days, and certain times of sport practices during the season, that they think that if they're not doing that, well, it's just not even worth doing. And that's not true. If you have 3-4 sessions a week, you're probably going to be able to maintain some pretty good progress.
You know what I think is probably one of the best traits that you could have or develop is adaptability.
That's huge.
Yeah, huge. I mean, being able to just do something and not let perfect be the enemy of progress. Because if you look at the end of a year, somebody that, had every single week a date night or got to the gym twice a week versus 6 days a week versus the person that is either all or nothing in and out, by the end of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, the progress would be substantially higher than if you're not just doing anything at all. And it's just a hard thing to wrap your mind around, because like when you got your injury, it's probably like, if I'm not going in and squatting, why go to the gym and do a leg day when I can only do the abductor machine and some quad extensions? Like what's the point? Exactly. But it's still better than nothing. But just wrapping our minds around that is like, gosh, it's just as much discipline, I think, as forcing yourself to do something more.
Yeah, because also like taking those actions is what's going to build you into the position to do more. Like if you don't start with the abduction machine and then you don't start building the glutes back up, then you're just not going to squat ever. It's just taking those first steps down the road so that you can actually make progress.
Agreed.
It's huge.
Well, cool, man.
I'm excited for this though.
I'm too. I think that going forward, we're going to get a little more detailed, see what the people want to hear.
Yeah.
What they like, what we want to dive more into just from a personal sense. And this is going to be good.
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, man.
So this has been the This has been the Forging Alpha podcast, and we will catch you next time
Episode number 1
in the books.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.